And so we're definitely gonna have a strong December to close the year.
Okay.
And 2021 is looking like really dynamically different and strong for us.
Okay, so let's get we're going to get the live stream started now. Okay, welcome everybody. Everybody's joining in right now to Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream. We have back with us today Empower Clinics, EPWCF over the counter, CBDT on the CSE. Stephen McCauley is the CEO. And again, anybody who's new to the program, we're looking for stocks which have that 10x to 100x upside potential. We're going to find out today if CBDT is going to be our next 10 bagger. We have a very close race right now. We've had 3 so far in 2020. We want to close out the year. Steve, if you can get the stock to 75 cents by December 31st, you're going to get a prize. So with that said, let's get started. Steve, I want to kind of jump into the big news. We're going to go to we're going to have a lot of audience questions today because we've got a lot of people here. I think what people are interested in now is this news about the COVID testing. So you want to jump in and tell us what's going on there with the Kai clinics?
Yeah, so we closed an acquisition back in October, Kai Medical Laboratory in Dallas, Texas. So it is a high complexity CLIA and COLA certified lab. It's state-of-the-art equipment, it's pristine, and it covers a full range of testing capability, whether it's blood, hematology, toxicology. But the biggest demand right now in the lab world remains COVID-19 testing. The demand is unbelievable, and in the U.S., certainly we see the challenges in Canada with COVID-19. It's exacerbated in the United States, and we see it on the news every single day. I can tell you, just sort of operating in the U.S., that demand is for testing is unbelievable, and we're positioned to serve it. We've got the capacity today to process 4,000 COVID-19 specimens per day, and the ability to expand that by adding more machinery and even adding a third, daily shift. So we know that we can take that capacity up as we get bigger transactions that keep coming through, and our pipeline is very full right now for sure.
Okay, so what's interesting? I want to ask about the PCR test, which is the big news. But we actually talked about this the other day. Is that people are kind of saying, oh, there's a vaccine and the COVID thing is going to go away. There's not going to be need for testing. But in reality, and that's what I was kind of thinking, oh, okay, the COVID thing is going. But you said something very interesting, which is that it's the need for testing is going to be here for forever almost. I mean, or
it's going to be
the next virus is going to be it's going to be the top of mind.
Yeah, I think, and I get this question from shareholders and followers often, and it's a bit of a misnomer. I think people think, oh, well, hey, Pfizer's coming out with a vaccine, Moderna's coming out with a vaccine, COVID is going to be gone, and then testing is going to be gone. It's completely false. First of all, vaccine and getting society globally vaccinated is going to take an extremely long period of time. Having an FDA-approved vaccine does not mean that someone is getting a needle in their arm with the actual vaccine. And it should also be understood that the concept of kind of having broad-based vaccination, you have to be somewhere. Society has to be sort of above 60% of all the population needs to be vaccinated to have the impact of herd immunity. So I can tell you in Canada, as an example, it's an anecdote, the flu shots every year, in Canada, we kind of only get to about 20% of the population actually get a flu shot. And a flu shot's been around for decades. So we're going to see testing in our society in many different forms for a very long time. We work with consultants right now. We're talking to airlines, we're talking to airports, we're talking to cruise lines, we're talking to industry. And all of these different industries, public sector, private sector, can't get back to full operations unless they know that the consumer or the employee either has a vaccine and they can prove it, or they have a negative COVID test. whatever that type of COVID test will be. And operationally, what we're seeing on the ground with big industry and small industry is there's going to be a need for all the different types of testing protocols depending on the operational focus that's out there. And so having the lab has really put us right in the middle of meeting that demand. And more importantly, our lab are doing a tremendous job on the R&D side, developing new testing protocols, and in some cases that are proprietary to us.
Okay, so which is the PCR test now?
Well, PCR is the kind of gold standard for the industry overall. So everybody would be familiar with either the nasal swab or the throat swab that we see take place for sort of traditional COVID-19 testing. That specimen is collected and then sent to a lab, a certified lab, for processing. So we've been involved in doing PCR tests from the beginning. But tests are evolving. So there's PCR tests, there are rapid tests, so there are rapid antibody tests, and there are now rapid antigen tests, all necessary to help speed up the detection because there's a bottleneck in labs right now because there's so many specimens being collected each day and sent to labs. The turnaround time has become a problem simply because there's more demand than there is capacity in many parts of the United States and even in Canada. So PCR tests are the gold standard. They're the most accurate. They're the most specific. And then you have your rapid tests. The antibody test is testing to see if you have had COVID-19, because once you do have it, your body builds up antibodies. So the test is looking for certain proteins that identify that those antibodies exist. So it's detecting the fact that you previously had COVID and have those antibodies. But all of the tests are going to be utilized in different ways in different industries going forward. And it's been important for us to be involved in these new forms of tests.
Okay. But you're doing what? You're doing saliva tests now, right?
We are. So we actually come to market in about a week's time, where we actually have our independent molecular scientists in our lab this week doing validations, because you, as a certified lab, you have to validate your processing on the equipment that you have, and you have to get an independent report. So the saliva tests are going to be crucially important to the market going forward. Having a nasal swab or having a throat swab once is uncomfortable, but imagine when you have multiple industries. Let's take film and television as a perfect example. The Screen Actors Guild, the union governing film and television productions in the United States, requires the productions and everybody involved to get tested 3 times per week. And it has to be a PCR test. They will not allow rapid tests as part of their policies. So you imagine if you're on set for a month, 2 months, 4 months, and you're getting a nasal swab 3 times per week. There's a lot of discomfort, and we're hearing that from people in the industry.
So yeah, nobody wants to get something, up
No, not at all. So the new saliva tests are a lot less invasive. They're still PCR tests. So there's a couple kinds that we have. The first one is it's kind of referred to as a sort of a swish and spit. So you're getting saliva and you're spitting into a tube, and that tube is being sent off to the lab. It's still processed as a PCR test, so it's the most accurate. There's another version that's coming to market, which is a mouth rinse. And a similar sort of thing, you're rinsing a fluid around in your mouth for 60 seconds, and through a straw, putting that into a tube, and it is sent off for processing. There's one key important thing to understand about both these types of tests. Both of these tests are now intended to be home-based, delivered to a house. You don't need a specialized med tech in order to take the specimen. So as an example, parents could order it to test their children if they wanted to. Businesses could order supply for their employees, and the employees could self-test and then submit the specimen to the lab for processing. A lot less invasive, but more importantly, it's easier to access than the current format.
Yeah, that's a real game changer, because the accessibility, it's like, anybody can do it. You don't need to, go see, I don't know, a nurse or whoever sticks a thing up your nose.
Well, that's exactly it. And we do specimen collection in our clinics, particularly in the state of Arizona. But we're clinic operators. We have physicians, we have med techs, we have nurse practitioners who have the capability to actually take the specimens. But that ultimately does not help the hundreds of millions of people and the it's not even hundreds of millions, billions of tests that are going to have to be accessible going forward into 2021, 22, and beyond.
Okay, so one of the big takeaways is that there's going to be a huge demand for testing. Now you have the saliva test. Now this is going to be available in the market in the next few weeks. Basically, you're going to bring.
Oh no, less than that. So the first version of our saliva test, the Kai saliva test, is going to be. We're going to start selling and marketing that test on December 15th. So we're finishing up the medical provisioning. The scientific provisioning right now in our lab. That provisioning finishes at the end of this week. And then we are going to be starting to make available that version of the test the following week. So right now we're saying December 15th is our target to start selling that version of the saliva test.
Okay, and that's going to, okay, so in terms of the revenue potential, is this something that's going to be available nationwide? In other words, that basically anybody can, get the test, they ship it to Kai and yeah. So in other words, you'll have a national or international footprint essentially.
Well, we do. So there's a regulatory framework to consider. So these tests are FDA approved, and then we do our provisioning, and then Kai, as a certified lab, is able to use its processing techniques to process that FDA approved saliva test. So we will be available nationwide in the United States, effective immediately. We've got a new specialized landing page that's being built right now. It's not live, but that is actually www.kaitests.com. So that will be launched here in the month of December. And it's really kind of think of an e-commerce site to a certain extent. We need to make the test accessible to consumers, however they want to access it. So whether it's going to a website, whether it's in our clinics, whether it's ultimately in pharmacies around the country, these types of tests need to be made available to consumers and citizens all over the world. The U.S. market, of course, is massive for us, and then we will start to bring these into Canada also. We just helped do our first Health Canada submission on our rapid antigen test. That submission actually went in just last week. And is with Health Canada now. So we're really working on not only just the U.S. market, but the anticipation of our expanded footprint with our clinic acquisition into the Canadian market.
Okay, so let's get into some audience questions, because we're getting the obvious next question is going to be, what is the cost of the saliva test? And my question is going to be, what are your margins on that test? Yeah,
so the costs are going to be very similar to what standard PCR tests are today, we sell our PCR tests for $125 US. Our rapid tests are sold for $65 US, and we also do combinations. So if sometimes people want to get a PCR test and they want to get a rapid test as well, because they want to potentially understand, did I have it previously and do I have the antibodies or not? So the saliva tests are going to be in and around the same price as the current PCR tests.
Okay, so very important. So I'm not a medical expert. So basically, I can take the test, the antibody test, for a couple bucks, and it'll tell me if I already have had the COVID or I have the antibodies for it.
That's correct. So, again, rapid testing it continues to play an important role and will play a more important role going forward. So the rapid antibody test and then the rapid antigen test are specifically different. So the rapid antigen tests are a form of a PCR test. It does require currently a nasal swab or a throat swab, but it goes the specimen gets mixed with a liquid called a buffer, and it goes into the little cartridge itself, and it takes about between 15 and 20 minutes to get a result. What's important about the rapid antigen test is it has the ability to detect asymptomatic people. So you may have no symptoms whatsoever, but you might already have the virus. The incubation period can be up to 5 days with the virus itself. So these rapid antigen tests can play a very important role at point of collection. So as an example, I'm a traveler and I need to get onto an airplane, but what we're seeing now is that airports, airlines, and now even countries are putting limits and rules and basically putting up borders, I guess, flying into a country or through a country if the passenger cannot produce a negative COVID result. So this is part of this new paradigm why having a vaccine is not directly correlated to testing demand. In fact, they're not correlated. So we believe that getting the lab on our books, and what we've proved to ourselves in a very short time with our new integration is that we can drive volume to the lab. You know, we had a tremendous month in our first month of taking over. Our next month, which was November just passed, was even more, was stronger than we even expected. We just announced another 10,000 specimen transaction for a film and television production. That specimen collection starts on December 7th. It's 10,000 specimens over a 4-month period, all running back through Kai Labs. You know, this is really solid revenue. That's a $1 million transaction right there. And so we're getting that type of demand coming our way because we have the technical and scientific capability to meet that demand. Okay.
And what's okay? Well, first I want to ask you, in terms of the competitive landscape, like what is, a lot of people are getting into testing now, or they are in doing these COVID tests. What is the competition in terms of the saliva test, in terms of the other thing, from a cost perspective and everything else?
So to address the question over competition, we are seeing far greater demand than lab capacity that's out there. It's resulting in delays in turnaround time for processing. You want to be able to get this result back now to the consumer now, within 24 hours of receiving the specimen. Unfortunately, we're seeing many situations where labs are just at their maximum capacity and they simply can't get the turnaround time. So from a competitive standpoint, we're really positioned nicely in the landscape that we're in to be, fortunate to have kind of more demand than can be met. We have the ability with the new lab. We still have extra capacity, but one of the key differences that I'm focused on is being involved in the latest technology when it comes to testing protocols, and that's why the 2 versions of the saliva tests are so important for us as Kai Medical to be validated on, to have our own version. We think that that's going to drive incredible volume through to Kai in the months and years ahead.
Okay. So is anybody else doing a saliva test? Like what percent, or what?
Yeah. So saliva tests are certainly out there. Like as an example, in Canada, they're doing some pilots with children in schools. And it's invasive to attempt to put a swab, quite deep in the nasal or throat with young children. So in Canada, they're testing different saliva applications as well. We definitely will see other saliva tests coming to market, but I can tell your audience that we're definitely an early adopter, and for us to be fully validated before we come out of 2020 for 2 different versions of saliva tests will be very important for our volume and demand going into 2021.
Okay. And so, it seems like the film and television business, that's like a big customer usually. You have a deal with Disney, I think?
Well, no, we have different, the relationship that we have is not a direct relationship with say Disney per se, but they have productions that we have processed specimens for. We have a variety of studios and a variety of productions across the country. To your point, it's a market that we're targeting. As I was saying earlier about Screen Actors Guild, they created policy for film and television productions around the world, whereby they said, well, you can go back to work, you can start your production again, but here are the guidelines related to COVID. And they create zones, zone A, zone B, zone C. And as you get further from the outside going to the middle, which is actually on set shooting, you have to clear your COVID result through each one of those steps. Once you're on set, no matter who you are, whether you're an extra, you're with the production, you're behind the camera, you're in front of the camera, in the US, you have to get tested 3 times per week. So the industry has been on hold, on a big hiatus for more than 6 months. There's a backlog of productions, and you're talking about billions of dollars of economic input here. And in order for them to get back to work, they have to have COVID protocols. A vaccine right now coming to market does not change what the Screen Actors Guild policies will be. And so it's an industry that we know, because of the frequency of specimen requirements, it's a great one for us to focus on. We just happen to be nicely positioned and serving that segment right now.
Okay, so Suban is asking of COVID detection results. How fast is your turnaround compared to other competitors in the market? Yeah,
so we're definitely holding the KPI of turnaround time at within 24 hours of receiving the specimen. We do have some same day turnaround as well. So as an example, if specimens arrive to us earlier in the day, we have the ability to process and get the result loaded into our IT systems and securely delivered to the individual, whose specimen that we've collected. But generally speaking, it's going to be within the 24-hour time frame. We're holding up to that KPI right now very comfortably.
Okay, so right now, what I guess the big issue is, okay, so there's a massive demand. I guess the question is the capacity, right? So what's your capacity right now
Sure.
for doing these tests?
So we have the capacity today on the way our current shifts work to process 4,000 PCR tests per day. I'm starting to get a lot of questions about, well, if you get larger contracts, if you're playing on a national scale, can you add capacity? And the short answer is yes. So we have the ability to run to a 3rd shift if we wanted to. We have the space in our state-of-the-art lab to add additional testing equipment. So I would simply purchase another piece of equipment that is specified to run the PCR specimen collection and analysis, and we would then double our capacity by adding another machine. We are actively looking at other markets now for additional labs in anticipation of having coverage in different time zones. So, Dallas, Texas is on Central Time Zone. Our lab is located right in the heart of the medical district in Dallas. So being in Central Time Zone is very accessible for transport in to our lab. But we anticipate that we may need to have other labs in West Coast, East Coast type locations to start to serve some of the larger capacity that's coming, particularly because of the saliva test that we're bringing to market.
Okay, so in terms of, I guess, if maybe can you do the math for us? Like, what's the, in terms of revenue potential? What can you generate?
Well, I mean, there's a simple way to look at it. Even if you just use round numbers. So, on average, let's say we're getting about $100 US per specimen, correct? If we were at full capacity of 4,000 per day, that's 400,000 US a day at a full capacity model. So we're not at full capacity now, but we're certainly seeing record month over month demand coming in. And of course, with the efforts that we're putting out on research and development, bringing the additional tests to market, I anticipate that we're going to start to get to that capacity. And it's why we're already starting to look at capacity models for 2021. Again, by the nature of the conversations that we're having, the big industries that we're talking to, working with airlines, working with cruise lines, working with tourism and hospitality, because those industries have to get back to work. People need to begin to travel again. We can't have 14-day quarantines and expect consumers to travel. And so the only way to eliminate quarantines ultimately is to have testing protocols that validate that the consumer, in fact, is COVID-19 negative. I think of it like this. I think that the negative COVID report is going to be as valuable as our passport and our boarding pass going forward.
Yeah. So I just did the math. So basically, you can do 12 million a month in revenues.
If you, if you are on full capacity and you're, we process specimens 7 days a week right now.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't take weekends off anymore. It just simply is not an option for us. We have to be available when the consumer demand is there, and it's there. So, I mean, technically, Jack, yeah, you're right. If all things were humming along perfectly, that's the type of capacity model that we're talking about right now.
Okay, so when will things be humming along perfectly so we can get to 12 million a month revenue?
Well, I tell you what the key is. The key is to get our new saliva test to market. The key is to get our new kaitest.com up and live. Our call centers are busy outbound. I've added additional sales and marketing people on the street right now to help talk to industries on a local and regional and national basis. And so we're simply, just ramping up kind of all the channels that you need, because there's a sales and marketing component. People have to be aware that we have the ability, that we have a high complexity lab that can process, the capacity that we have. And we have to market and talk about the new versions of the tests that are out there. So we're doing all of that work right now. I've got graphic designers and web designers working on landing pages and the new marketing sites. We've got call centers, we've got sales and marketing folks, and of course we have scientists and lab techs who are working so hard every single day to meet the turnaround times.
Okay, so Steve, so the lab business, though, we spent a lot of time on this, but this is just one facet of, Empower. This is one facet. So what's, anybody that's kind of joining right now, any new people, can you give us a snapshot of what the whole picture of what Empower Clinics does? What's the big opportunity that really you're after? Because it's way beyond, the testing business.
Yeah, I mean, the testing aspect is one part of it for sure right now. But, our vision for ourselves, we see ourselves as an integrated healthcare company. And, we want to, meet patients where they are and when their need is there. So what that means to us is we will continue to be a clinic business. We will continue to roll up clinics and have more reach. Right now, our focus point is what we refer to as paramedical services. Some companies call it allied health, and that is, think of pain management, physiotherapy, chiropractic, acupuncture, podiatry services, osteopathic services, naturopathic services. So our clinics provide those types of services today. And we're starting to move ourselves closer to primary care and actually connecting more, like really joining at the hip with primary care centers. And we'll have a lot more announcements like that as it relates to our new Canadian acquisition that's just pending closing right now. We've finished due diligence on that transaction. We're doing the final legal work at the moment on documentation. So there'll be some announcements coming relatively soon on that, but it'll definitely be before the end of the year. I'm talking imminently. So we have a vision of being an integrated healthcare company. We need to deliver our technology. So we've had a telemedicine layer, that we've been using every single day for since I took over the company almost 2 years ago. Telemedicine for us and ultimately technology for us is going to play a bigger and more important role going forward. I couldn't help but listen intently to your last guest. They're in a totally different sector than we are, but something struck me as very important, and it's really about data. We are already working on artificial intelligence initiatives, figuring out how to harness the insights of the millions of data points that we have. So if you take our patient base today, so we have 165,000 patients in our database today that we serve. We close our Canadian transaction. We're going to see us very soon in 2021 have access to millions of patients. So think about the power of being able to gain valuable insights of the data of your patients, their qualifying conditions, their treatment options, the efficacy of their treatment options. Using AI, are we able to connect sort of IoT to things like our iPhones, our Apple Watches, where there's health data and health information? If we're able to actually pull that data, put it into our physicians' EMR systems, and literally with a click of a button, the doctor can actually have insight to the fitness regime or lack of fitness regime of the patient when they come in. So as an example, if I'm a patient and I have diabetes or diabetic symptoms, well, the amount of steps that I have taken over the last week, month, 6 months, and my health data is going to become a primary data point that can help guide the physician. So we're already working on technology developments and technology layers that utilize artificial intelligence and IoT to provide better data for physicians to guide the healthcare outcomes for our patients. So integrated healthcare for us is not just about having a clinic, it's about having access to data or better access to data. It's about utilizing telemedicine because perhaps the patient can't come in to see the physician, so the physician should go to the patient through telemedicine. So integrated healthcare for us is really the path where we're going. The laboratory is very important because we're meeting a certain type of demand right now. It's obviously great for cash flow and great for our revenues, but it's part of our overall healthcare system that we're developing.
Okay, so we haven't really talked about the technology aspect before. This is like a new kind of another opportunity that we're going after. Now, there was a question actually, hang on a second, about acquisition. Subban was asking. I think you're starting to talk about that.
Yeah, so that's an easy one for me. The answer is yes. So we definitely have our pending Canadian clinic acquisition that we fully anticipate closing here in the month of December, and we're very happy with the due diligence process that we went through, and I'm very optimistic about what's coming. There'll be really important news, not only with the closing of the acquisition, but what the pipeline behind that looks like. So the transaction, when we close it, will include 7 locations. Originally, when we announced it, was 6, but another one has been added since that point in time. And then we'll have some very continuous and important, news about how we roll that out on a much larger scale across the Canadian market.
Okay, so you recently you had the financials came out, so it looks like there's been some pretty strong revenue growth over last year. The overall picture, you're getting closer to profitability. You got these acquisitions coming in. So what can we expect? Let's say the next 12 months in terms of with the current run rate of the company is. What is it approximately right now?
Well, again, guidance is always something that we have to be a little bit careful with, but we certainly see, really nice momentum with our lab. Of course, we're seeing, great transactions coming through, real cash flow. Our operations down south on the clinic are holding their own. The new Canadian clinic transaction and the additional rollouts that come behind it really give us, a lot more revenue runway. So, we see this thing, definitely in 2021, moving through to that sort of 10 million range right now. And it's hard to predict fully where the volumes, particularly on the new products coming out of the lab, what that will actually mean for us. So I can't give, any sort of full guidance on what that looks like, but we certainly see the demand. We talked a lot about it here earlier, and the Canadian clinic rollouts, we have a really precise financial model related to those. We know what each of those paramedical centers contributes. We know if it's a small market, what it will contribute. We know if it's a large market, what it will contribute. And so it's very predictable for us. We have a nice, formula. We have great metrics around what a rollout looks like. So we can be very methodical, and we can be very precise in what we expect when we roll into a new market, or we expand within an existing market. Because some of the larger markets, so you take the Greater Toronto area where the group is based right now, because of the size of that market, we can handle a lot of different standalone centers in that market. And then obviously we expand out from the GTA through other parts of Ontario, and then we start coming west as well, and then further to the east.
Okay. So in terms of M&A, activity going forward, what's in the hopper for the next year? We're entering the new year. Weeks.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to continue to expand our footprint in clinics, whether that's rolling out organic clinics or in partnership, or looking for other strategic clinic acquisitions. So we're definitely active in the acquisition market. Let's put it that way. I'm constantly having transactions being presented to me. We're constantly looking for transactions. I would anticipate that we will be actively looking for additional lab acquisitions in the United States, and we'll definitely consider that for the Canadian market as well. Health Canada is a little bit slower in its sort of approval process for tests, but we anticipate more variety of tests will be available in the Canadian market with Health Canada support. And in fact, we are registered as Canadian correspondent on a new rapid antigen test with one of our pharmaceutical partners from the US. So we're in the game in Canada for sure. We're just excited to get our first clinic group on the ground, add all those practitioners, staffers, med techs to our books, and really just rapidly increase the size of our company.
Okay. We get a question about, are you getting a lab in Canada too?
We're looking at that. I don't have a particular one identified at this point in time, but we absolutely are starting to consider should we do that for Canada. What we've learned from the Kai Medical acquisition is that it is really a very good strategic fit to our healthcare strategy. We also see that it's accretive, and it's accretive quickly, right? So I was pleasantly surprised at how smooth the integration went, but more pleasantly surprised at how quickly we could start driving traffic, specimen traffic into the lab to drive more cash flow. So again, if that's kind of a roadmap for what the benefit of a lab can do when you acquire it at the right price, it's in the right market, and you've got the ability to help drive volume into it. And that's what we had. We've got our clinics, Sun Valley Health in Arizona are actually driving volume to the lab. So they fit very nicely together. Having the clinic layer, driving specimens to a lab that you own is kind of helping control your own supply chain. And so I like the way that fits.
Jason is asking, what about lowering the cost of the tests to how in terms of how are the pricing of your tests? How does it compare to the market? And
we're definitely right within the market. I mean, we're actually lower than a lot of other competitive test prices. And those prices that I gave you, remember that those are retail prices, right? So one of the ways for test pricing to come down is through increased volume, right? Volume really makes a difference. So as we look at larger transactions with larger industries or larger segments, I wouldn't anticipate that a wholesale transaction price is going to be $125. I would see that coming down because of scale. But if you've got guaranteed volume on a large scale, then it makes our whole processing system more efficient. We can then begin to potentially offer slightly lower prices to larger transactions simply because we have guaranteed scale. So that, and that applies to any industry, right? This is not just about testing, any sort of commodity. When you have, guaranteed large volumes, you have the ability to be more competitive in your price offer.
And what are the margins like in the testing space?
The margins are strong. I won't, quote specifically, but it's, again, the demand is so high that we can hold strong margin on this, and the lab industry is holding strong margins. Again, we are right. We're competitive. I mean, we see tests in markets that we serve, even around Arizona, that are priced at a much higher price point than what we're marketing our products at. But we feel we should be priced fairly. We do think that we want to be able to retain strong margins for ourselves, but I don't think that we have to be outpricing or higher priced, the highest priced tests in the market. I think we've found a sort of fair price for that product and service that we offer.
Okay, Steve. So you did the kind of the testing aspect, or the T component. What's the timeline for like when is that going to be introduced? What?
Sorry, Jack, you just broke up. Could you repeat the question again?
You mentioned the sort of telemedicine, or the IoT.
Yeah.
That you're using that example steps. So I guess it would be a wearable device that would do some sort of.
Yeah. So the reference to IoT is all of us consumers today, patients today, in one form or another, whether it's through your mobile device or it's on you might wear a Garmin, or you might wear an Apple Watch, and you track your health statistics. What we're talking about is connecting our technology layer to those devices. So a patient would provide permission for their health data to be pushed or pulled into our IT system, and that data could be made available, obviously on a private basis, to a physician. So a physician would have more data than they have today on their patient to be able to make better decisions about the delivery of healthcare or healthcare recommendations to the patient. So we're looking at how we utilize artificial intelligence and higher degrees of technology to improve patient care long-term. Technology will be a crucial part of the delivery of healthcare in the years and decades to come. We just want to make sure that we are at the forefront. We recognize it. We want to invest in improvements. So we will certainly start doing that work as we get more clinics, we have more patients. We need to be a better technology provider than anybody else in the markets today.
And Steve, when is that going to? When are you going to bring that to the market?
So, we've already started the due diligence. We are working with different prospective software vendors today. So I would say that the project is underway. We haven't made any decisions yet. We haven't issued POs. We haven't entered into a contract, but we are already working through design elements. We are looking at how we basically scope this project. And this is a project that is not a 1 month, 3 month, 6 month project. This is a project that evolves and iterates over time. So you would be looking at a 2 to 3 year horizon where different features of this new technology layer start to come to play. Some are a little bit faster and easier. Some are much more sophisticated and just simply take more development time. but we have to start these projects now. This is an urgent, immediate need.
That's going to be. We got a lot of people interested in the testing.
Yeah.
Any potential testing at airports in Canada?
So the answer is yes. We are working with different airline consulting groups who specialize in airline relationships, airport relationships, hospitality, tourism, and so those conversations are taking place. We've previously announced a partnership with an AI company called Loop Insights, who specialize in contact tracing. They also are in discussions with big industries like airlines and airports and others. So we're very much, obviously, the testing layer, the manpower layer to do specimen collection, and then partnerships like Loop Insights are the contact tracing part of it. And really, industry needs both of those solutions to come together. And that's why we even entered into a partnership with Loop Insights, because we really like their technology. Theirs is not an app, but it's actually secure wallet technology in your device. So you don't get tracked like an app, 24 hours a day. It's a check-in, check-out. But we're doing an integration with the back-end system of Loop Insights right now, so that we would have the ability to directly push the COVID result to the wallet of the individual person or traveler, whatever the case may be. And we think that's going to be very important sort of technology connection, as Loop are working on travel bubbles. They just came off finishing the NC2A bubble that was in Las Vegas for basketball, and they had a successful live version of that. So we fully anticipate participating with Loop Insights in programs like that, whether you want to refer to them as bubbles or travel bubbles, whatever they may be. But there's a need for service providers like us and a need for service providers like Loop coming together to solve these problems.
And we got a couple. Are you still? Was there like an initiative in the psychedelic space at some point, or is that what's happening there? I've got a lot of questions on that.
Very much. We are still very keen to be involved in the delivery of mental health care in the future. Our strength is with clinics and managing physicians and the delivery of care. Until we get our clinic layer on the ground with our Canadian acquisition, it's from that point that we'll start to get onto the mental health side of the business. How psychedelics play into that will really prove itself out over time. The psychedelic space, unlike the cannabis space or medical cannabis, is not going to be a recreational product. There will always be a need for clinics and physician care in the delivery of psychedelic treatment options as the regulatory framework comes along. So whatever that product set might be. So we absolutely are going to continue to participate in the mental health sector, but we need our clinic groups first, and then we start to expand with the delivery of mental health care and having the appropriate practitioners in our clinic layers, whether they're standalone clinics or as part of our integrated health system. That's still to be determined, but we definitely will have a position in mental health going forward.
Okay, so kind of here, like what's we're just a few year. Some of the issues, like what kind of news investors can expect from Power, in the first quarter of 2021.
Yeah, so from a news standpoint, I think what our investors, our followers, your participants in the show can expect is continued news on additional clinics rolling out in the Canadian market, continued information about the expansion of services within those clinics. There will be news about how we're moving further into the primary care sector and partnering with primary care more closely going forward into 2021. We definitely will be updating the market on our new saliva tests, our new mouth rinse test that's coming to market, and the impact on that. So volumes, enterprise contracts, KPIs such as how many tests are we processing each month, and what is that looking like? So that's the type of news. Acquisitions will always be at the forefront for us. So I would anticipate that there's going to be continued announcements on how we're expanding through accretive acquisitions, both in the US and in Canada.
Okay. Oh, we got interesting question. Okay. 65,000 patients seeing these big revenues. Can you discuss how this is measured, revenue patient metrics?
Sure. So the 165,000 patients is the total number of patients historically in our database that's been accumulated over the last 7 years, let's say. So you don't see or treat 165,000 patients each month or even on an annual basis. You see a percentage of those patients. So we look at retention of patients. So when do we see the same patients again? Is it once per month, once per year, once per 6 months? We also look at new patients coming in. And as our services evolve to be more focused on paramedical treatment options and then ultimately through to primary care, those metrics for us will change because in those services, so if you take paramedical services, you tend to see patients quite frequently. So if someone is coming in, perhaps they have an injury, perhaps they just want a massage, you tend not to see a patient once per year and that's it. You tend to see multiple repeat visits. And what we see in the paramedical world is that a patient may come in for, say, physiotherapy for an injury, and then later they come back for massage therapy, or later they come back for chiropractic treatments. So we see a crossover to other of our practitioners within the paramedical world. So it's one of the reasons we like this type of clinic model, because you get good repeat visits and you get more retention than perhaps in other of the services that we've provided in the past.
Yeah, and there's more services that you could layer in, so it becomes
Correct.
It works great. Okay, Steve, let's kind of recap. The favorite question again that we have: 3 reasons why investors should want to own share today.
Well, I think you have to start with the sheer magnitude of the healthcare market. Healthcare is changing and rapidly evolving. The delivery of care is evolving and how it evolves. But the one thing that cannot be denied is it's essential, and it's a massive market around the world. The US market that we participate in is largest GDP in the world. Healthcare is enormous. So that alone, just the sheer size of the market. I think the other thing for us is I want everybody to understand how much we're focused on technology and how technology is going to play such an important role in the delivery of healthcare going forward. So we recognize it. We're already very active with telemedicine. We use it every single day in our clinic delivery. So we can expect to be talking much more about how technology is going to play a big role for us. I think finally, when I look at the market out there, and I want your followers and our investors and shareholders to understand, I see, this, being a multi-billion-dollar company, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. I look at the comps that are out there. I look at, in the US, you've got Amwell, you've got, Teladoc, which is TDoc. You've got success stories in Canada like Well Health. So they are getting really tremendous valuations, 30 and 40 times TTM, so trailing 12 months revenue. We're getting about 6 times right now. So if we could even get halfway there, I would be thrilled. You know, we'd be a 60, 70 cent stock, getting half of that valuation. You start to layer on all the new revenues that we've already secured for 2021. I think we've got some real potential here in our valuation going forward. And I expect that the market is going to start to reward us.
Yeah, I think that's a key takeaway. That a lot of the comps are, you know, that's things that we like here is stocks would only have a big upside, but at the same time, they're, you know, cheap relative to, you know, their group based on those comps.
Right.
So, excellent. Okay, we'll you know, look forward to having you back very soon with some big news, hopefully before the end of the year. So on that note, Steve, thank you for joining us on today's live stream, and we'll see you on the next one.